We're good.
Okay. Remember in December, we were concerned about that gold star going on our driver's license? And they did this sneaky thing and put it on the special call, for the, call for the special session. Nobody even knew about it. They had hearings, a couple of hearings on it during interim in transportation that nobody goes to. And we try to cover things up there, but this has been a bad year and didn't have as many people up there, and so we didn't even see that. We had no idea. Thank goodness that John Dougal had called me. Actually, he sent me these texts, these long texts about how upset he was about the gold star and that we need to do something about it. He neglected to tell me he had gotten when they were going to put it in a special session, so I thought, okay, this should be a slam dunk. All we're going to do is ask that we could be exempt from it. Now, it's hard, people are agreeing to the gold star because that's how you get on an airplane. You can't, in about a year you won't be able to get on an airplane without the gold star. But we should have a right to be exempt because we can get a passport and get on without having the gold star. And that's all we were asking. Let us have an exemption. Because the feds did this to us years ago, but our state and several other states opted out. And then they came back, after a few years and said, okay, but you're not going to get on an airplane. Well, that was a game changer, right? But we have to talk to the people and say, no, there's another way to get on the airplane, and you don't have to have a gold star. Well, they snuck that into the special session. Special sessions are terrible. We should never have special sessions because it's done, behind closed doors and and if they do decide, like they did with the on the marijuana one, to have a hearing, it's some night when nobody is there, and it's just, well, there was a lot of people there, but it's just not the same as going through the regular legislative session, where it goes through a system that takes a while and everybody has a chance to show up and say something and contact your legislators and see the bills and know what's going on. This went so fast, nobody knew what was going on, and then they stuck in this other bill. Well, I want to show you this. This is my driver's license. Now, I was the only one up there fighting this. I want you to know that. And I was calling everybody. There were other people calling in, your good friend Sharon and everybody else that was then, and Barbara and others that were really concerned about it. I went to get a driver's license after the December special session. It took me a while to get it. Yesterday, my driver's license came. There is a gold star on this driver's license. And it came with this that explains, shows you the gold star and says, notice, due to recent updates in Utah's licensing regulations, you may receive a replacement driver's license identification card, now displaying an additional indicator for federal usage. If so, destroy your previous card. So when they says if so, I got a new driver's license, but are they going to send all of you this? Because it says if so, destroy your card. Well, you destroy your card if it's expired. They don't have to tell you that. And that, I've never seen anything go that fast. They had to be so ready for this, for me to get, it wasn't even just maybe 2 or 3 weeks. It takes a long time to get your license in the mail. That I paid for and applied for my new driver's license. I want to share that with you because you need to know that and watch for it.
And what is the purpose of the gold star? I think
Well, it said right here, it's so that the federal government can have more information on you. And it says that the additional indicator, as they called it, for federal usage.
So in other words, they shared Utah state files with the federal government, and those files are signified by the gold star?
We don't know for sure. Like I said, this was sneaky, and maybe someday you have John Dougal come and talk about it. He's really been studying this, and when he sent me that text and I handed it to my husband, and my husband started reading it, he was hyperventilating. I'll have to add it during church. I don't usually look at my phone during church, but he was sending this to me in bubbles, and my pocket was vibrating so hard I decided maybe my children needed me. And then I made the mistake of handing it to my husband, who then didn't enjoy the rest of church. So never mind, we shouldn't have filmed that. But anyway, I'm not
Want me to restart?
But I want to talk now, in the time that I have left, of course, about what's going on at the legislature. And I'm just going to quickly go down some bills and then I'll come back to them. But pro-life, and you talked about nullification. If there was ever a Supreme Court decision that has ruled, that was, this one was even beyond a state issue because it is a federal issue, because it's life. And yet the Supreme Court said, we can take away life. How did that happen? And they also said at the same time, and states, you can't do anything about it. That's what they said. And so we have over the years, as states, tried to do what we could do about it. We've chiseled away, and there have been about 3 great, what they would say, laws like Casey out of Pennsylvania, things that made a dent in Roe versus Wade. We pass other ones sometimes that are small enough that we could get away with them, but sometimes when they're big, they have to go chisel away at Roe versus Wade. That's how we live. And one of those bills we have this year, it's House Bill HB 136, and it's a pro-life bill. This bill is so simple, and yet we have to go all the way to the Supreme Court with it. We just even get it passed, and that is to say that after 15 weeks, that women cannot have an abortion. They can't kill those little babies. Now, there's exceptions there, as there always is in Utah, and then I would, that's another issue. But sometimes those exceptions will actually help us get through the courts. But 15 weeks, why 15 weeks? That's when you're well in, just really come over that hump of going into the second trimester. There's so many reasons, and one of those things would be the barbaric way they kill the little babies. You have a 15-week unborn baby that really just needs to grow. They have fingernails and all kinds of things, and they're ready to be born, except they haven't developed enough. In terms of, they just need to grow. They need to stay in mommy's tummy for a while and continue to grow. Well, they abort babies at that point in the state. And you know how it's done? It's called, well, what to say, for a nice way to say it, the nice way is dismemberment. They go in with this little baby still alive and start removing baby parts and crushing the skull. And the baby can feel the pain. That's this barbaric way of destroying these little babies. And we're having to fight like crazy to get this thing passed. It's disgusting. And we need your help on that. So remember, that is House Bill 136 to at least stop it when this barbaric practice is starting. And we want to save these little babies. There's another one that's it's House Bill 166, and this has to do with little babies that have Down syndrome. And it is a simple bill. It just simply says they cannot get an abortion just because the baby has Down syndrome. That has a trigger to it. I hate bills with a trigger, but that's what happened. And it simply says that this bill will go into effect if and when the Supreme Court upholds it, because there are other states who are on their way to the Supreme Court. Now, they'll try to pull this with us on this 136 with the 5 weeks and saying, well, Mississippi is already on the way. Arkansas introduced the bill just yesterday. Let's just wait and let them do it. Well, no, that's outrageous. We go to the back of the line and we'll just wait and we'll let them just keep right on, killing babies. And Utah won't have to spend any money that way. Somebody else can spend the money and stand up. But they need us. Part of the reason is that this will be 3 bills now that are headed to the Supreme Court if we pass ours and Arkansas passes theirs. And that splits the circuit. It's very, very important. All 3 are in different circuits. And to have split circuits means that we have a chance that one of those bills will get, that the court will take cert on the Supreme Court. Because you can send the bills onto the court and do all the right things. But then the Supreme Court has to decide whether or not they're going to hear it, because they get more bills than they could ever hear, more not cases rather than they could ever hear. So when you have a split circuit like that, that makes things easier to get them through. And we need to not just sit back and do nothing and say let somebody else spend the money, because we don't want to spend a couple $1 million to save babies. We would spend a couple $1 million to save a baby that had already been born in a hospital someplace, wouldn't we? Or to go, thank goodness, and pull these little children out of wells and everything else. We spend millions and millions of dollars. But for some reason, they don't want to spend any money to save unborn babies, and that's what they are. They are unborn babies.
I've often thought, why isn't Utah leading the charge on all these moral issues? Why can't we set the example out of 50 states? We have to be tail end Charlie.
Yeah,
So
you're right. I agree. Now, it never used to be that way. If you remember, back in 1991, we passed the most restrictive abortion bill in the nation. You know what that bill said? No abortions after conception. That's what that bill said. And we passed it. It passed the House, it passed the Senate, the governor signed it, and then Jan Graham was the Attorney General. And she played games with it until Byron White had retired from the Supreme Court, because we had the court to pass it. And then after he had retired, she let it go. And a little bit of it was upheld. It did get served, but just a little bit of it was upheld. So we used to lead the charge, and that was a great time, and I loved helping being part, as many of you were, in leading that charge. So the other bills that they have, we talked about the Article 5 Con bill. I'm going to come back and talk a lot about that in a few minutes. There's a bill about the birth certificate bill, which is House Bill HB 153. Great bill. It just simply describes biologically, scientifically, by doctors, the difference between a girl and a boy. And that's what should be on the birth certificate. The doctor looks at that. The doctor determines this baby has the baby parts necessary for reproduction, and then these are male baby parts, and these are female baby parts. And it's all about reproduction and what you need to do, and that's it. And that's a great bill, getting a lot of, I don't know how far it's going to go. It better pass, but it's missing gender. It says sex. It doesn't say gender. No, it doesn't say gender, because there's hundreds of those. It says sex. There's two.
153?
Yeah, HB 153.
Thank you.
Then there's several bills that deal with initiatives, and so I'm not going to go into a lot of detail, because right now in the House they're trying to bring those bills together. After what happened, and we found out that Salt Lake County controls the state in initiatives. Whatever the Salt Lake County wants, that's what we're going to get, regardless. The rest of the state can say, no, we don't want it, but they have enough people with maybe 2 or 3 other Senate districts, and they win. And we lose. So we're going to be looking at that and see what we can do to make the initiatives legal. And under each line, in tiny, tiny little print, 8-point, it said, by signing this petition, I agree that I have read and understand. Nobody, first of all, they couldn't have read that little bit, because most people can't read 8 points. So we're asking to just put that as 12-point. And require those paid people that are carrying petitions, whether they're getting signatures to get people's names on the ballot for election, or whether they're getting signatures to put initiatives on. Remember, we live in a republic. Initiatives turns us into California. So maybe point out that the person carrying it has to say, oh, by the way, before you sign this, you have to read this, and you have to tell me that you understand what you just read, and that you did read it. That might slow it down a bit. And there's other things to try to control this thing where one county can control the entire state. There was a bill about, they call it end of life, we call it assisted suicide. I didn't remember the number of that. There are several gun bills this year. We need to be very concerned and watch these gun bills. Mental health is driving mental health. And you know what? If your family decides that you have a mental issue, and I think my family probably thinks I do, they can arrange to have your gun taken from you. So you need to look into those gun issues, and I just don't have time to go into them today because we're running out of time. One I'm really concerned about is 50% more alcohol in beer. And I'll tell you why I'm very concerned about this bill with 50% more alcohol. First of all, why do we need it? For the last over 80 years, we've had the same percentages, 3.2% alcohol in beers that can be sold in the stores. Now, if they want to go into the state liquor stores, they can buy what they call heavy beer. It has more alcohol. But this is the stuff that's being sold in the grocery stores and convenience stores and marinas and places like that, where anybody can walk off the street and walk in and buy it. And then beer. That's where our children get their beer. And the numbers, are very high of children who drink beer, and they get it there. And they can get their friends to sell it to them sometimes. They can get other people over, somebody that's 21 to buy it for them. Or they do what they call tap the shoulder, and they'll stand outside convenience stores and tap people on the shoulder to get them to buy beer for them by giving them money to do it. And surprisingly enough, they've got about 20% of the people that will do that for them. So 50% more beer means that they'll get as much alcohol in 2 cans of beer that they would get in 3. And this is our children. And they don't have a shut-off valve. You hear about young people in college campuses and other places, and just high school kids that die of alcohol poisoning. Kids' brains don't shut off. They just keep drinking, drinking, drinking. And we're going to give them 50% more alcohol. Have you ever seen the pictures of the adolescent brain from alcohol. There's holes in their brain. And so they don't need to do this. Just so some guy who can go, whatever, can have more alcohol in his beer, we're going to put our children at risk. It's just crazy, and it doesn't need to happen.
Well, their big excuse is that the manufacturers will no longer produce the 3-point-something% beer.
Not true, not true.
But I know.
I
That's
know,
what they
but
say.
I'm glad you brought that out. I'm really glad you brought that up, because it's not true, and I've got the documentation on it, yeah.
Better yet, if they won't produce it, just make beer only sold through the liquor stores.
Yeah, there's ways to do this. And and it is, what you two are both talking about is commerce, and they're saying we got to do this. Well, I've got the letter from, was it Anheuser-Busch, is that, and they're threatening to have some of their products that they won't send here, not necessarily the products, maybe not as big, whatever, 6-pack to 36-pack or things like that. And if you go down, which I've done, and I've got pictures of just walking down the aisle like at Smith's food store and looking how much beer there is and how much variety. There's so much variety. One brand is like Corolla or something, I can't remember what it's called now. They have shelves of that, and then they have different kinds. Light, dark, heavy, you name it. They have all these different things, and then different sizes. And so they have said that they will not send everything that they have been sending. They're still going to send most of everything. But what we do have with that, because I've got these graphs and charts that shows how many barrels of beer. It's all about barrels of beer, and how many they'll send and what they send now. But guess what? It's on there. It's our local brewers are on there. And over the last 10 years, the imported beer coming from out of state, as they call it, is remained about the same amount of beer. In fact, a little less. On the other hand, the local brewers are selling 75% more than they were selling 10 years ago. So I have a letter from them saying, stay with 3.2. That's what we have, and if anybody doesn't want to send their beer in here, we'll fill up the gaps. So it's absolutely, commerce is not an issue here. In fact, you use the local brewers and you're giving local people money instead of the out-of-state people who are trying to threaten us. We don't want to do this to our children. We don't need more drivers on. People that are used to drinking 2 cans of beer now are going to get the alcohol for 3. And they were saying, well, yeah, but we're worried about people not coming in and buying anymore. Do you know anybody who drinks beer who's going to say, they're not going to give me the percentage I want, I'm drinking nothing? That's a great thing, So if they want to threaten us that they're not, we know better than that. That's the craziest thing I've ever heard. They just had one. So anyway, that bill is Senate Bill 132, and we are definitely working against that. And there's a bill, there's several bills, but the main one is House Bill 71 to change our sex education laws. Jackie?
I'm just wondering if we've got data on how much is being consumed by the youth.
Yes, we do. I don't have time to go into all that. I definitely have to get on my paperwork
Okay.
out. We absolutely have the data, and the data is sad. It's really upsetting how much the youth are drinking, and we just don't want to give them 50% more alcohol because they're not going to change the amount they're drinking. That's not what the kids do, and neither are the adults as far as that goes. A guy who right now is drinking a couple of cans of beer is going to drink a couple of cans of beer. And it's not going to make any difference how much alcohol. And the kids always try to drink all they can. They just run out of money. But we'll give them a lot more alcohol for their money, and that way they can get more alcohol. So those numbers are definitely out there, and we've been using them. And I want to go back to talking about the Article 5 Convention, because we absolutely need your help. And I was thinking about this. I was pretty distraught yesterday when this bill came out of a committee, and yet I knew absolutely that it would. They would not put that bill in a committee